Welcome back to the Explainer. So, picture this. You're completely surrounded by the unforgiving, freezing waters of the Antarctic Ocean. The wind is just absolutely biting, the sea is vast, and the sheer scale of the frozen landscape makes you feel, well, incredibly tiny. Today, we're unpacking a documented event that completely stunned a crew of seasoned oceanographic experts. It's an incredible mystery that really tests the limits of what we think we know about the natural world. Imagine reading this exact entry in a ship's official logbook. An Antarctic expedition spotted what looked like a giant iceberg in the distance, but then it changed direction. Now, icebergs, by definition, are ruled by wind and ocean currents, right? They're inert, lifeless mountains of frozen freshwater that have just calved off from glaciers. They literally do not have a mind of their own. So, what happens when a literal mountain of ice decides to chart its own independent course? Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, the freezing horizon. A routine observation. So we start up on the bridge. Captain Morgan is scanning the horizon, peering through that really dense, icy fog that always hangs over the water down there. He spots a massive white shape looming in the distance and calls out a totally routine warning. Large iceberg ahead. Out in these extreme latitudes, avoiding ice is basically job number one. But encountering it, that's just an everyday thing. For the captain, it's just another giant block of ice in a sea absolutely full of them. But almost immediately, things just don't add up. Down at the navigation station, navigator Chloe is checking her satellite charts from the previous day. She looks at the data, looks back out the thick glass window at this massive white blob, and says, "Strange, it wasn't there yesterday." Now, sure, icebergs drift, we know that, but for a mass this incredibly huge to just appear out of literally nowhere overnight, it's the very first hint that something seriously anomalous is happening out there in the fog. At this point, the tension on the ship really starts to build as the crew gathers at the railing. The expedition's photographer, Ethan, lifts his heavy telephoto lens to get a better shot. But as he gets a closer look, he mutters, "That's one weird-looking iceberg." And he's right. Even from a distance, the physics just don't line up. Instead of the jagged, really sharp edges you'd expect from a calved glacier, the surface texture is strangely smooth. Icebergs typically absorb long wavelength light and reflect blue, right? But the way the sunlight is hitting this object, it just isn't right. Section 2, the impossible movement, defying the elements. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the exact moment everything changes. Chloe looks up from her instruments, deeply confused, and says, "Captain, icebergs don't do that. It just changed direction." In an absolute instant, the fundamental laws of oceanography are just thrown right out the window. Every single scientific assumption this expert crew had about their environment is completely shattered, because whatever this thing is, it isn't drifting, it's steering. Let's actually break down the real-time timeline of this anomaly, because it's wild. Yesterday, the object is completely missing from all charts, nothing. Today, in the morning, it's spotted in the distance and everyone assumes it's just static ice. But by midday, the impossible happens. It suddenly and deliberately changes direction. This sends everyone rushing to the bridge in total confusion. And by the afternoon, Ethan zooms in with his camera and confirms that this massive object is actively moving against the prevailing ocean current. And this brilliantly illustrates the exact paradox the crew was staring down. On one hand, we expect icebergs to be relatively static, drifting passively as complete prisoners to the movement of the water. But this anomaly, it's totally unmapped, it deliberately changes direction, and most shockingly, it possesses the immense raw physical power required to actively propel itself against the forceful pull of the Antarctic current. There is simply no way an iceberg does that. At this realization, a heavy, heavy silence fills the bridge. You could hear a pin drop over the low hum of the ship's engines. The resident marine biologist, Dr. Sarah, grabs her binoculars. She focuses in on the impossible white mountain in the distance, and her voice suddenly cuts right through the quiet. "Wait, that's not an iceberg. Let's move to and see how this builds." Section 3, the giant revealed. Surfacing from the deep. The dark water around the shape begins to churn and roll, and then a gigantic blue whale emerged from the icy water. What this highly trained veteran crew thought was a colossal piece of ancient ice carved from a glacier was actually a living, breathing giant. Just think about the sheer scale required for an animal to be mistaken for a geographical feature. This truly enormous shape slowly surfaces from the dark depths. It's the pale, heavily scarred back of a mammoth blue whale. You might be wondering, well, why did it look white from a distance? Well, in freezing waters, whales often accumulate diatoms, basically microscopic algae on their skin. Combined with thick layers of pale scar tissue from ice and past predator attacks, this surface catches the piercing Antarctic sun. It creates the absolutely perfect optical illusion of a jagged white iceberg. The entire crew just stands there, completely speechless, on the deck, utterly captivated as this majestic titan remains peacefully beside their ship, seemingly studying them just as intently as they're studying it. But it was a totally fleeting window into a largely hidden world. Because just as quickly as it had arrived to completely shatter their understanding of the horizon, the encounter was over. Then, with one powerful dive, it disappeared beneath the ice-filled ocean. Just a single thrust of its massive tail, an appendage roughly the size of a small airplane, to put that into perspective, and the giant returned seamlessly to the mysterious freezing depths from which it came. Section 4. The Ocean's Hidden Secrets. A humbling reminder. So, the crucial point is captured perfectly by Dr. Sarah, who said, "We almost mistook the largest animal on Earth for an iceberg." I mean, really think about how remarkable that truly is. These are highly trained scientists, seasoned navigators, and experienced captains. They are equipped with literally the best modern technology available, and yet the natural world so easily and so completely managed to deceive them. It really brings us to a deeply humbling truth. Even today, with all of our advanced satellite mapping and high-tech deep-sea sonar, the ocean still reminds us how little we truly understand its giants. We can map the stars in the sky, we can map the terrain of other planets, but a living, breathing creature the size of a literal floating island can still disguise itself as a block of ice in our own oceans, just slipping undetected right under our very noses. It's kind of wild when you think about it. Which brings us to our ultimate takeaway. If the ocean can hide creatures so incredibly massive that they literally look like floating islands to the highly trained eye, what else is swimming beneath the uncharted Antarctic waters? It's a real puzzle. The deep holds secrets we are only just beginning to fathom. So keep questioning, keep observing, and I'll see you in the next explainer.